Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Ramirez Wash Process Guatemala from Calendar Coffee. And there's the bag right there. And Calendar, based out of Galway, Ireland, and they're a coffee roaster we featured on this channel several times before. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and update you on the Advent calendar situation, as it's getting a little frustrating at this point. We're currently recording this video on December 5th, and I still have not received the Advent calendar yet, which is a little frustrating because ideally I wanted to release the first review on December 1st to kind of go along with when each of those copies were released. But as a result, we've had to push that back, and we didn't have videos to kind of backfill for that. So this coffee, which I had initially scrapped the review for, was a great coffee that I could use, as I already had notes and a tasting wheel created for it. I hadn't drank this cup of coffee in a while, and it was going to be kind of interesting to see if it might have changed. I scrapped the coffee for a number of reasons we'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee itself, as this right here is day 33. And you'll kind of see that the last day we had for the notes was day 18. So yeah, initially I had not planned on recording and releasing a review for this coffee, but I guess it kind of worked out that way given our unfortunate situation right now. But the recipe we did settle on for this coffee was a 16:1 water to coffee ratio, 208 degrees Fahrenheit, brewed through the Chemex with a medium grind, and Calendar is lighter than a lot of the British Isle coffee roasters. That's why we call it a light European for its roast profile. And with that out of the way, let's start discussing this coffee. So day 14, which was the first time trying it, and it was a pretty interesting first impression, as we were getting quite a bit of this sweet floral coming from the cup of coffee, and that was a little different and unique for it in that sense. It reminded me a lot of previous Calendar coffees though, because we've said before, so many of these Calendar coffees have this pretty distinct light honey taste to it, in contrast to Fried Hats, which has a dark honey taste to it, and it was definitely present in here. It left a pretty decent first impression. Day 15 went back, and similar cup, but the sweetness can be labeled as complex. I think it's a slight bit of a complex sweetness, as it reminds me most of a sugar cookie, and if I'm being a little bit more specific, like a floral sugar cookie. I've never ordered a cookie that's maybe like a rose flavored cookie, but I think that the florals in this are a little bit more herbal than the rose tends to be, so I'd be more likely to call this a hibiscus, as I've kind of said that the hibiscus is a little bit more herbal than the rose is itself. So I'd probably call this maybe like a hibiscus cookie, if I'm being completely honest. It's the best descriptor I could have. Honey definitely still present in this. And I was speedrunning this coffee because initially I was planning on putting out this review when we didn't have a whole lot of content to put out, but day 16 went back, and there's still a nice amount of sweetness in the cup. The sugar cookie sweetness and the florals are in about equal parts, and that's why I like to call it a floral cookie, because those were the two most distinct factors in here. They were in about equal parts, so I just wanted to highlight and emphasize both of them. Slight bit of caramel and honey to the cup as well. Still pretty solid, if somewhat unspectacular. Day 17 went back and ran into the V60, and I did not like it at all through the V60. It was even more herbal. We kind of mentioned that it was slightly herbal before, but as a result, this was an overly herbal cup. Slightly less sugar sweetness in the cup. Reminded me a little bit more of a high-end craft chocolate as well, which a lot of Kopi's coffees do. And it was slightly earthy and vegetal as well. There was a huge noticeable difference, and I wasn't going to go back to the V60 for this one. Day 18 went back to the Chemex with the higher temperatures, and we were experiencing again those same things. Slight bit of honey, light honey, and then a fair bit of florals as well. Sweetness still relatively moderate though. Can pull out a very slight bit of fleshy fruits, which they have listed on here as a flavor note. And coffee, for the most part, still remains pretty subtle and tame. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and see how much this coffee might have changed over the course of 2 weeks, as let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel and see what we're getting for today, as well as this tasting wheel. And I'm kind of curious to see what this tasting wheel looks like, as I have not looked at it in 2 weeks. But let's take a look. It looks like we have two things at level 4, the finish and the florals. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that on this day. I think this coffee is actually better than what I remember. I think it's improved over the course of those 2 weeks. It's a little sweeter. It's got a little bit more defined of a flavor profile now. But the finish and florals, yeah, definitely justified at that level 4. Sweetness, level 3, and acidity, level 3. I think those are both pretty good, actually. Maybe the sweetness, if we're being super generous, could be bumped all the way up to a 4, but I think higher end of a 3 is perfect. Acidity, yeah, cleanliness, level 3. That one could also be bumped up. Again, I think this coffee is just better on this day than I previously remembered, so that could be bumped all the way up to level 4, but I think 3 is good. Body 3, yeah, it's actually got a fair bit more body than expected for being brewed through the Chemex. Chocolate, caramel, stone fruit, all at a level 3. Level 3 for the stone fruit might be a little generous, but it's probably on the lower end of that level 3. So that could be justified. Slight bit of savory. Mentioned a little bit of herbality in this cup of coffee. So actually, for somebody that has not looked at this tasting wheel in 2 weeks, I would actually agree with almost everything on here. I think this is about as accurate of a tasting wheel as I could imagine, and having sipped on this coffee and gone through the notes seem to be pretty well in line with this coffee as well. So I think that this is pretty accurate, everything that we've said so far in this video from day 18 all the way through day 33. All right, so overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee, and one of the main reasons I scrapped this video was because I didn't think that there was going to be anything too overly productive or useful in this video. This coffee was a little underwhelming, and it wasn't as good as I had previously experienced from other calendar coffees, so I didn't think that there was necessarily too much to discuss with this coffee. It has improved, so maybe the best thing I can kind of say about this coffee is wait a little bit longer on this one if you had this coffee, or if they still offer this coffee, because it does get better. And could just be me having sped run this coffee earlier before and not having had enough time to really see if this coffee might change over time that impacted how much I enjoyed this coffee. I would still say that it's just fine. It's not my favorite calendar coffee. They've had some really good coffees. I really like calendar, so that's why this coffee being very much my flavor profile, the rose and peach are the two flavor notes that they have listed on here, was slightly disappointed not to get a little bit more of a cleaner, straightforward rose and a much more distinct stone fruit from this cup of coffee, as neither of those two were in huge abundance for me personally. And again, could just be me not being able to pull out this coffee or working through this coffee a little too fast. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to is somebody that likes a slightly prettier cup of coffee, as this one is definitely a little bit more on that pretty side. Still has a fair bit of that light honey, and it's a little bit more complex than I think I was expecting to. So keep those things in mind. A lighter profiled for, well, those British Isle coffee roasters as well, because it's definitely more light than places like 3FE or Square Mile or a lot of those other British Isle coffee roasters. But I think for the most part, I'm going to leave this review at that. If you by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, we'd love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well, or your impressions of calendar, as apparently we review a lot of calendar's coffees on this channel. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Ramirez Wash Process Guatemala from Calendar Coffee. Thank you for watching.